Okay, here I am, Andy XL, back again with another NFXL podcast. And for those that have listened and watched the recent ones, I promised you a first stab at an NFL mock draft. So here it is. And with 8 weeks of action behind us in the NFL, I'm going to play the game of trying to predict what could happen in the early part of the 2026 NFL draft. Now, I say play the game because that is what it is. None of us truly know what's in the minds and plans of NFL front offices. Some of them don't even know the answer to that. It's easy to say they have a need at a certain position, but teams may feel differently or have plans to address that need via free agency rather than a draft. Indeed, they may even trade away some of their current personnel, changing what their needs are. But this new but this will be based on my predictions of where teams will finish in the standings and what their current needs look to be, and then what I consider their best options to be and what I would do if I were them. In this first edition, I'm only going to look at the first 8 picks or first quarter of round one, as right now it is clear who are going to have early picks than who's going to make or miss the postseason to fill the middle part of the running order. And given the unpredict, unpredictability of the postseason at this point, who will be taking which late round one picks and in what order? To put it another way, I don't mind playing the game, but do not want to indulge in pure guesswork. So, without any more further ado, after a sip of coffee, let's get to the team I have currently, according to my own projections, who the team that are going to have the first overall pick in the 2026 draft. And it is the same team that had the first pick in the 2025 draft, the Tennessee Titans. I have the Titans as having the first overall pick for the second consecutive year, but as they took Cam Ward last year, they will not be going quarterback this time around. So, what are their needs? Well, first and foremost, I have it as their O line. A team that ranks near last or last for both pass and rush offense either has a bad quarterback and bad running backs or has a bad O line. Now, Cam Ward certainly has work to do technically, but he's not a bad quarterback. Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears are decent enough running backs, so the O line has to be the issue here. And they have needs across their O line at tackle, guard, and centre. But there is definitely no inside interior offensive lineman worthy of a first overall pick. And going OT here would be a bold move indeed at pick one. Also on their own line, Kevin Seitler hits free agency, which could lead to a vacancy at guard. If they were to look at offensive tackle, Francis Malgoa out of Miami or Spencer Fano of Utah are the best offensive tackle candidates right now. And they might be top 10, but first overall? Question. Then there's the D line, which is another issue for the Titans. The Titans have been poor against the run, and their pass rush comes more from the interior of their D line than the edge. So an edge rusher and a run stuffing defensive tackle would be nice additions for the Titans on their D line. And with Draymond Jones, Sebastian Joseph Day, and Arden Key all hitting free agency this offseason, the spaces potentially left by them will need to be filled for sure. Three edge guys they could consider here are Ruben Bain Jr. out of Miami, who could well be good enough to be a first overall pick. Then Keldrick Falk out of Auburn, and TJ Parker of Clemson. Those two might be top 10 worthy, but not first overall as it stands. So there are Ruben Bain Jr. would be an option at edge for sure for the Titans. Wide receiver is another one. Rookies Kimera Dike and Elik Ayamanor are having decent seasons for round four picks, and they also have Calvin Ridley, but he is 31 now, and whether DK and Ayamanor will make up into his long-term successor is questionable. So the Titans could look for that guy early in this draft, but again, not with the first overall pick. Another need they have is an inside linebacker. There is a need there for the Titans, and it looks a strong cast at inside linebacker this year. But I would still be surprised if one went in the first 10 picks. So this is not really an option for the first overall pick for Tennessee. Well, it isn't an option. So if we're looking at inside linebacker, wide receiver, and potentially O-line as well, could they trade back? So that's their other option, is to trade back, stay in the top 10, then take the offensive tackle, edge, or wide receiver you want. possibly even the inside linebacker, whilst gaining future capital. This may come down to how much they love Ruben Bain Jr. on the edge. If they do, then take him first overall. But if you have any doubt he's going to be truly exceptional in the NFL, trade back and give yourself options whilst gaining capital for the 2027 draft. In conclusion for the Titans, because they've got quite a few options really, I'm not completely sold on Bain, so we'll trade back with a potentially quarterback needy team such as the Jets, Browns, or possibly the Saints. That would only move them back a spot or three, and they may still be able to take Bain if they wanted to, or an offensive tackle. Right, that's it for the Titans and the first overall pick. Second overall pick I have is belonging to the New York Jets. So I project the Jets at 2, and they must surely be looking to go quarterback in this draft. The bench Justin Fields only for him to get a reprieve courtesy of an injury to journeyman vet Tyrod Taylor. But the owner's thoughts about Fields are now public knowledge, so surely they'll make a change here for 2026. Quarterbacks that would be the options here are Fernando Mendoza out of Indiana, Dante Moore of Oregon, and Ty Simpson at Alabama. They look the quarterback one front runners right now. Personally, for me, I would go Mendoza. I think he looks a really good prospect. The only question here is, do they trade up a spot to ensure they get the man they want? Of course, if they end up at number 1, they just take whichever quarterback they want. Right, projecting at 3, I have the New York Giants. New York, so bad they get to pick early twice, to paraphrase the song. The Giants have a bright young quarterback prospect in Jackson Dart. They will hope Cam Scatterbo is back and healthy to partner Tyrone Tracy at running back. Similarly, with a re-signed Malik Neighbors, which you'd expect to happen, added to Wan'Dale Robinson at wide receiver and some youth at tight end, the offensive inverted commas skill positions do not need round 1 attention from the Giants. On defense, they have a lot to offer in terms of their pass rush. Sexy Dexy is a pending free agent. They will need to re-sign a defensive tackle, though. Their run defense has not been great this season. There may be another team looking for a run-stuffing defensive tackle at some point. And with Paulson Adebo and Javon Holland both pending free agents, the secondary may need looking at too. So whereas the Jets is quite a simple scenario really, both the Titans and the Jets have a range of things they could look at. And also with the Giants, the O-line's been better recently, but there's still plenty of room for improvement there. So the options at pick 2 for the Giants could be Peter Woods, the defensive tackle out of Clemson, who is excellent against the run but has versatility to add to their pass rush from the inside too. Caleb Downs, the safety out of Ohio State, who is a rare talent indeed at safety, or one of Marigoa or Fano to add to their O-line. Tough one to call. Any of those would be good moves, although my preference would be for Woods at DT or Downs at safety, as they are by far the best in their class at their respective positions, whereas the Giants could look to free agency to address their O-line needs. Braden Smith and Jonah Williams are pending free agent options they could look at right tackle, for instance. Right, 4th pick overall, I have predicted to go to the Cleveland Browns. The Browns have a really good defense, and assuming they manage to keep that band together, we'll be having an offense-dominated draft in 2026. And like the Jets, that has to start at quarterback, unless Dylan Gabriel suddenly starts to look good, Shedeur Sanders emerges somehow, or Deshaun Watson is given another crack. Surely not. Assuming they go quarterback, they could look to trade up ahead of the Jets to take their man, or sit and wait and take the QB2. Or if they sit and do not like the QB2 at this point, take an offensive tackle. Again, Marigoa or Fano could be options if available, or go wide receiver. Bit early for the likes of Jordan Tyson from Arizona State, who looks the wide receiver 1 at this point. But for me, like I say, it's a bit early for a wide receiver at this pick. They have so much to do on the offensive side of the ball. This is a multi-year project. So I would go offensive tackle here and try to find a quarterback solution that gets you through 2026. Then plug your quarterback in when you have laid the groundwork. Right, 5th overall, I have as the pick going to the New Orleans Saints. As I can see them picking up a win or 3 in the rest of the season. If it was 3 or more, that would likely be enough for Tyler Shugg to get a shot at being their starter in 2026. So if they're in spot 5, they may have taken quarterback off their needs list. If they're picking earlier, Shug probably hasn't done well, and they might be going quarterback. But I'm projecting him at 5, so I'm going to say he's done well enough to get a crack at it. With a range of pending free agents on their O&D line, as well as in their secondary, those are all options for the Saints to consider with their first pick of the draft. At pick 5, they should take Peter Woods at defensive tackle or Caleb Downs at safety if they have dropped this far, because they're too good to let pass by. But if they're both off the board, pick 5 may be a bit early for the next defensive tackle or offensive tackle, and possibly at edge, and also for the cornerback 1 in this class. So trade back for one of them, or do what I would do on the basis Woods and Downs are gone, and go bold by taking Jeremiah Love out of Notre Dame. If that came to pass, like I say, if Woods and Downs has gone. But I'll come back to my actual picks later. But Jeremiah Love out of Notre Dame, both Alvin Kamara and Kendre Miller will be entering their last year of their current deals in 2026, and Love looks to be an elite level running back talent. Of course, if they end up picking earlier, like I said, Shug will not have done well, and they will likely take a quarterback. Right, on to pick 6. I have that going to the Miami Dolphins. Pick 6, that's appropriate to Tua. He looks way too inconsistent and has far too many bad games to be the guy who takes the Dolphins to the promised land. But they have signed him through 2029. So much as they will need a change at some point, in my opinion, now might not be the time. So therefore, we look at edge, defensive tackle, and cornerback, which could become needs due to free agency. And wide receiver looks an obvious need to find a partner for Jalen Waddle. Again, if Peter Woods falls to them at 6, take him in a heartbeat. Other than that, we are just in the area where a second edge guy or the first cornerback would be a good choice for the Dolphins. They could also look at offensive tackle to improve the protection for the fragile Tua and help their run game too. Multiple options for Miami, but the temptation to take Jordan Tyson at wide receiver, it could be another one that might be too much for them and might be the best option unless somebody like a Woods at DT or Marigoa at offensive tackle fall to them. Right, pick 7. I've got going to the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, the Raiders have done really well to take outstanding talents at their position in Brock Bowers and Ashton Gionte as the first picks in the last 2 drafts. And if they get an opportunity to do the same again with Jordan Tyson, they may well pull the same trick off here to give them a true wide receiver 1. The fact quarterback is even a consideration shows the foolishness of paying Geno Smith all that money, but they're paying him someone to use him for now. He did well with good weaponry in Seattle, so potentially giving him another weapon here and hope he plays better in 2026 has to be an option. If he does not, make the change then. So if he doesn't play well next season, make the change. The defense has done okay this season, so the priority is offense. And again, if Tyson does not come their way, the O-line needs improving, so look for an offensive tackle. Or the final option, as I see it, would be to let Eric Stokes go via free agency and draft his replacement at cornerback here. Pick 8, so rounding off the 8 teams, I think I'll have the first 8 picks. The Arizona Cardinals. Those that have heard my views on Kyler Murray would know that I was just a quarterback change for the Cardinals, but I just don't see that as happening, so I'll move on. Although they will have another year of underachievement behind them if they're picking at 8, there is plenty to like on the Cardinals roster, and thus there are not many pressing needs. If they lost Jonah Williams to free agency, then offensive tackle becomes a glaring need, and they have Calais Campbell hitting free agency and approaching 40 years of age. So edge is another area to consider for them. Running back could be another option given James Conner's age, and he has just 1 year left on his current deal. So at the end of 2026, he'd be a free agent. And not to mention his name yet again, if a certain Arizona State wide receiver fell this far, could the Cardinals really refuse the temptation to take an Arizona State wide out? On the basis he goes earlier, I would say edge is the direction the Cardinals go with this pick, assuming Williams is re-signed. That's how you'd see it before you see everybody else's picks. But, right, this goes to how I would see, if that was the draft order, what I think each team should do. So here's the first 8 picks, and I'll try to do my best Roger Goodell impersonation as we go through. So the first 8 picks go like this then. With the first overall pick of the 2026 draft, the New York Jets have traded up with the Tennessee Titans from position 2 to take Fernando Mendoza, quarterback, Indiana. At pick 2, the Tennessee Titans take Ruben Bain, edge, out of Miami. With the third overall pick of the 2026 draft, the New York Giants select Caleb Downs, safety, Ohio State. With the fourth overall pick of the 2026 draft, the Cleveland Browns select Francis Mauigoa, offensive tackle, Miami. With the fifth overall pick of the 2026 draft, the New Orleans Saints select Peter Woods, defensive tackle, Clemson. With the sixth overall pick in the 2026 draft, the Miami Dolphins select Jordan Tyson, wide receiver, Arizona State. And then Roger Goodell wouldn't have a sip of coffee, but I'm going to have one. With the seventh overall pick in the 2026 draft, the Las Vegas Raiders select Spencer Fano, offensive tackle, Utah. And with the eighth overall pick in the 2026 draft, the Arizona Cardinals select Jeremiah Love, a running back at Notre Dame. So that's the look at the first quarter of the 2026 draft as I see it right now. Like I said just the other day, when I went through this, it suddenly got the proverbial juices going about the 2026 draft. It's one of the most exciting nights of the year in the NFL. I know there's no play actually happens, but it's a night of optimism for everybody. And it gives you that buzz. And it really did going through this and looking at the options. And then when I actually did the picks at the end, it makes you think, wow, this could really be a big moment for the individual players and for the teams. So there it is. That's how I see that at the moment. Hope you enjoyed that. I might indulge in the odd one, but for me, the draft, I don't like really doing mock drafts, as you kind of got the hint. What I prefer to do is say, right, these are the best players in the class. This is what area of the draft they should probably go in, and then leave it up to the teams because you don't know. You like I say, trading up and down, they could end up in any position or whatever. But anyway, enough of that. I just like to predict which players will go in which area of the draft, so which are high end first rounders, mid first rounders, low first rounders, and then which are more likely to go in round 2, round 3, etc. And I've been highly accurate at that. I see myself as the most accurate out there, but you'll have to judge me on that come 2026. But my data tells me that I'm more accurate than anybody else, including the likes of Daniel or Jeremiah, anybody else you want to name. So anyway, stick with me for the 2026 draft, and you'll be pretty much have a great idea of what's going on. Right, Sunday's coming tomorrow, and we'll have a look at the Week 9 preview, Part 2 and Part 3. Part 2 will look at the early Sunday slot, and Part 3 will be the remainder of the games. So tune in for those. See you soon.